Chicago never slept. It only changed its rhythm. By night, the streets hummed with secrets that the daylight refused to hear. For half a century, the Romano and Moretti families had kept the city in their fists, two empires separated by a river of blood and pride. They built skyscrapers and casinos. They owned politicians. They whispered into courtroom walls. Every block had a flag, red or black, and every piece was just a pause between funerals. Lena Romano had grown up behind bulletproof glass. The youngest child of Don Romano, she had watched her brothers trade childhood for loyalty oaths. The elder, Marco, had taken a bullet that stole the use of his legs. The younger, Nico, had vanished into hiding, a ghost meant to keep the family line alive should the dawn fall. Lena had sworn that her life would not belong to this darkness. She wanted classrooms, not contracts, research papers, not vendettas. But blood had a way of calling its own. Her father never forced her into the family business, yet the name Romano walked ahead of her wherever she went. In the corridors of Chicago University, professors spoke to her with cautious respect, students with curious fear. All except one, Professor Michael Hart, a quiet man with the kind of calm that could silence chaos. He taught political ethics, the art of power restrained. He never looked at her as a headline, only as a person who asked sharp questions. Their first meeting had been nothing more than an office-hour conversation about a paper. But the moment lingered, his voice steady, her gaze defensive, both aware of the invisible wall of her last name. She left that day unsettled by the rare comfort of being unjudged. In a city ruled by violence, she found the one man who dared to protect her, even from her own bloodline. The Romano mansion stood on the north side of the river like a monument to guilt. Marble pillars, imported vines, silence that reeked of control. Da Romano spent most evenings staring out the window toward the skyline, as if counting the sins he couldn't undo. The war with the Morettis had cost him soldiers, money, and Marco's legs. He'd sworn that no daughter of his would marry into power again. Peace, he said, would come only when both families were too tired to kill. That fatigue had finally arrived. The Morettis were bleeding money, their smuggling routes choked by federal pressure. The Don saw a chance, an arrangement of peace, not affection. No more coffins, he told his counsel. We talk. Lena overheard the plan through the thin oak doors of his study. The word compromise made her stomach tighten. She had seen compromises before, each written in someone's blood. That night, she told Marco, who rolled his wheelchair to the balcony, face pale under the city glow. Peace is just another deal, Lena, he said. But maybe it's the only one left. She didn't answer. Her mind was still in that classroom where Michael Hart had looked at her like she wasn't a threat. Days folded into weeks. Between lectures, Lena sensed a shift in the air. Black cars tailing her route home. Unknown numbers calling and hanging up. Chicago's silence was never empty. It listened. Michael noticed her unease. You flinch when doors close, he said once after class. I grew up in houses where doors meant secrets, she replied. He smiled faintly. And yet you keep walking through them. That was the moment trust began to root, quietly, like something forbidden. In a city ruled by violence, she found the one man who dared to protect her, even from her own bloodline. When word spread that the Romano and Moretti families would meet at the Caprice Hotel to discuss truce terms, Chicago's underworld held its breath. The meeting would decide whether the city lived or burned again. Journalists waited outside, federal agents watched from across the street pretending to be tourists. Lena was forbidden to attend. Her father told her to stay inside, for optics. She obeyed, at least until she heard her brother Nico's name whispered by the staff. Someone had seen him near the South Pier. The pier was Moretti territory. Panic tore through her reason. She left the mansion through the back gate, coat over her shoulders, heart pounding like an alarm. At the pier, she saw only fog and a figure leaning against a lamppost. It wasn't Nico. It was a man she'd never met. Tall, tailored, eyes like polished steel. Ethan Moretti. "So the princess leaves the castle," he said, voice smooth enough to hide the venom. "I don't talk to your kind. You'll have to. Our fathers want peace. Maybe they should start with us." She turned to leave, but he caught her wrist. Not hard, but enough to show he could. "You don't belong to the streets, Lena. That's why they'll all fight over you." She pulled free, disgusted. "You think peace is another word for ownership." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "You'll understand soon." That night, she told no one. Fear would only start another gunfire symphony. Instead, she poured the tension into her writing assignments, staying late in the library where Michael Hart often lingered grading papers. He offered her coffee once. She accepted. Their conversations became longer, drifting from philosophy to survival. He never asked about her family, but he knew. Everyone did. Still, he let silence do the healing. In that stillness, Lena found something almost like safety. Safety is a strange addiction. You only feel it when you know it can vanish. The fragile calm shattered on a Thursday night. The truce dinner at Caprice Hotel ended in a toast and a photograph. Two aging dons pretending time could erase blood. Outside, fireworks disguised the sound of distant gunshots. Someone had ambushed a Romano truck near the river. 3 men dead. The peace was already cracking. The Don smashed the brandy glass against the wall. Moretti dogs. They can't live without war. But Old Man Russo insisted it was a rogue act. "No one wants another funeral," he pleaded. The Don sent scouts to confirm. They returned with a different truth. The attackers wore neither family colors. Freelancers, maybe. Or someone testing the line. The Don watched him sink into the chair, tired beyond rage. "I built an empire to protect this family," he murmured. "Now I can't even keep peace alive for one night." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then stop building empires, Papa. Build exits." He looked at her, surprised by the sharpness. "You talk like your mother," he said softly. She wanted out too. The mention of her mother, dead 15 years, closed the room like a curtain. The next day in class, Lena barely heard Michael's lecture. When he dismissed the students, she lingered. "Do you believe people can change their nature?" she asked. He studied her. "I believe people can choose which part of their nature wins." "What if the city doesn't let them choose?" "Then they build a new city." She smiled sadly. "You talk like a man who's never seen blood." He looked away. "You'd be surprised." Some men hide their scars under silence. Others turn silence into armor. 2 weeks passed without another attack. The Don resumed negotiations, desperate to protect what little calm remained. He even mentioned the unthinkable, formal alliances through marriage. Lena pretended not to hear. Her nights were spent between family dinners that tasted like politics and library hours that smelled of ink and distance. Ethan Moretti reappeared at a charity event organized by the university. Cameras flashed as he greeted donors. His eyes found her across the hall. He raised a glass. She froze. Michael stepped beside her. "Friend of yours?" she said. "Enemy." "Then let's make sure he remembers that." They walked away, ignoring Ethan's stare. But Ethan didn't forget. He never did. That night, as rain carved silver lines down the dorm windows, Lena opened a message on her phone. "Nice dress. You wear fear well." No sender name, only a black rose emoji. She deleted it, but her hands trembled. Every threat begins as a whisper. By the time you hear the echo, it's already too late. Don Romano tightened security. Michael noticed bodyguards shadowing her to campus. "Is this your new normal?" he asked. "It's temporary." "Temporary in your world seems to mean until the next bullet." She wanted to argue but couldn't. He reached into his coat, handed her a small silver key. "My office. If you ever need to disappear for an hour, use it. No one knows that lock but me." For the first time, Lena felt tears threaten. "Why are you helping me?" "Because I teach ethics, and sometimes ethics requires courage." That weekend, the Romano estate hosted the first joint council dinner in 20 years. The Moretti Don arrived with his sons, Ethan and his elder brother Adrian. The tension could have cut marble. Lena sat beside Marco, who whispered, "Smile for the camera, Sorella. Peace needs good lighting."
Toasts were made, deals discussed. Ethan's gaze never left her. When she stood to refill her glass, he followed to the corridor. "You shouldn't walk alone," he said. "I'm not alone," she replied without turning. "You think your professor can save you?" he asked, stepping closer. "In my world, heroes die first." She turned then, eyes like ice. "Then pray you meet one." She walked back to the hall, heartbeat louder than to drown the orchestra. He mistook her silence for fear. She was only measuring the distance between peace and war. Later that night, a black car followed her from the mansion. She told the driver to take another route, but the car mirrored every turn. At a red light, it pulled beside her. The window lowered. Ethan again, smirking, just making sure you get home safe, before speeding off. That small act of intimidation
Told her everything. Peace was fiction. The war was breathing again. When she reached the mansion, her father was waiting. "You spoke to him?" "He spoke to me. Stay away from that snake." "I'm trying, Papa, but snakes live in every garden you planted." The Don's eyes softened with pain. "You think I wanted this life? I built it so you'd never have to beg for safety. Then let me earn my own." They stared at each other, 2 generations divided by the same fear. The following morning brought headlines. "Unknown gunmen attack Moretti warehouse. 5 dead." The truce crumbled in a single photograph. Both sides blamed ghosts. Both sides loaded guns. Marco ordered extra guards at the estate. The Don canceled all public appearances, and Lena realized she was again a prisoner of her family name. She called Michael. "Can we talk?" When she arrived at his office, rain was pouring again. He poured coffee, listened as she spoke, not about Ethan, not about threats, but about exhaustion. "Every time I breathe, someone dies for it," she said. "I'm tired of oxygen that costs blood." He said nothing, only touched her hand, a gesture simple enough to feel revolutionary. For a moment, the storm outside became background noise. Even in a city of bullets, hearts find their own kind of rebellion. The next evening, Don Romano received a letter sealed with the Moretti crust, an official invitation to a summit, neutral ground, the Caprice Hotel again. Russo would mediate. Against Marco's advice, the Don agreed. "One last talk," he said. "If this fails, Chicago burns." Lena watched his car disappear down the driveway. Marco sat beside her, revolver on his lap, though he could barely lift it. "If he doesn't come back," he said, "you'll have to lead." She shook her head. "I lead with words, Marco, not guns." "Then start writing history, because tonight decides if we have one." Hours later, a single call came from Russo. "It's done." They agreed to silence, for now. Relief swept the mansion, but peace, as always, demanded its price. At dawn, Lena found a note slipped under her door. The handwriting was unfamiliar, yet hauntingly careful. "Tell your professor to stop following you. Next time, he bleeds first." She tore it in half, then again, until the words disappeared into dust. Threats lose power only when you stop fearing death. She was not ready to stop. The city woke to rumors that the Don's convoy had been tailed after the meeting. No shots fired, but every soldier knew what that meant. Someone was measuring routes. Within the week, 2 informants vanished. Marco called it preparation. Lena called it inevitability. She met Michael one last time before the semester ended. "If things get worse," she said, "and you don't see me again," he interrupted gently, "then I'll come find you." She wanted to believe him, but belief was a luxury the Romanos had buried long ago. Hope is the most dangerous weapon because it reloads itself. The Romano estate prepared for lockdown. Guards on every gate, phones monitored, deliveries inspected. Chicago's skyline glittered, indifferent. Somewhere across the river, Ethan Moretti watched from his penthouse balcony, glass of wine in hand, fury disguised as calm. His father had forbidden him from touching Lena again, but obsession had no leash. He whispered to the empty room, "She'll come to me, willingly or bleeding." The city had seen wars end and begin, but never for love. This time, love would be the spark and the fire. Lena didn't sleep that night. Wind rattled the old glass panes of the mansion like the city was whispering warnings. From Marco's room came the soft click of his wheelchair against the floorboards. He never slept when their father was uneasy. The Don's office light burned until dawn. Every corner of the house glowed with quiet fear. When morning finally broke, Lena stood on the balcony, coffee untouched, staring at the skyline that divided her world. The skyscrapers glittered like knives. Somewhere beyond them, Michael was beginning his lectures, speaking about justice and morality while her own family plotted survival. She wondered if justice could exist for people like them. Maybe justice was just a luxury for those who didn't inherit enemies. The Don called her into his study. His face looked older, smaller somehow, as if the night had stolen part of him. "Russo says the Morettis will honor the truce, but I don't trust silence." "Then don't. Silence is what men like Ethan use for cover." He glanced up, surprised. "You met him again?" She hesitated, then nodded. "At the pier. He wanted to prove peace had a price tag." Her father's jaw tightened. "You should have told me." "I'm telling you now," she said, "so that when this peace burns, you won't pretend to be surprised." He sighed. "You sound like a prophet, Lena. Prophets die young in this family." "Then let me be the last one." And she walked out before he could answer. Prophecy was just foresight disguised as defiance, and defiance ran in her blood. Outside, rain began to fall again, soft at first, then furious. Lena drove to campus anyway, because doing nothing felt like surrender. Her driver trailed behind. She told him to stay in the car while she went to the lecture hall. Michael was already there, chalk in hand, drawing concentric circles on the board. "Power," he said when she entered, "is the distance between what people want and what they're willing to do for it." He turned and saw her soaked coat, the fire in her eyes. "And some people," he added, "are willing to do everything." "Even destroy themselves?" she said. He nodded slowly. "Especially those." She sat in the back listening, letting his calm voice cover the noise inside her mind. For an hour, the world made sense again. Equations of morality, diagrams of choice. When the class ended, she lingered. "Do you believe people can be born into sin?" He said, "I believe we inherit debts, but we choose whether to pay them or forgive them." She smiled faintly. "You talk like a priest." He said, "I talk like a man who's seen the cost of guilt." That afternoon, news spread of a bombing at a dockyard warehouse. No casualties, but the message was clear. Someone was testing the fragile peace. Both families blamed ghosts again. The Don ordered his men to stay defensive. The Morettis did the same. Chicago's underworld was holding its breath, waiting for the first misstep. Lena met Marco in the courtyard. "You think this truce will hold?" she asked. He laughed bitterly. "The only thing that holds in this city is resentment." Every peace in Chicago was just a rehearsal for the next betrayal. At dusk, she drove alone to the lakeshore, the one place the city forgot to claim. The water looked like polished steel. Gulls circled lazily above broken piers. She sat on a bench, breathing air that didn't smell like gun oil or fear. Her phone buzzed, an unknown number. Against reason, she answered. "Ms. Romano, Don Moretti sends his regards. He appreciates your courage at the dinner." "Tell him I appreciate distance." A pause. "He also hopes his son's behavior will not cloud future peace." She almost laughed. "Your Don's son doesn't have behavior. He has instincts." His voice lowered. "Instincts are hard to cure, but they can be contained. For now, stay inside your borders." The line went dead. She sat staring at the waves until the cold forced her back to the car.
Inside the glove compartment, she saw the small silver key Michael had given her, safety in metal form. She closed her fingers around it. Safety was still just a theory. The next few weeks crawled by. The Don hosted closed-door meetings with lawyers and intermediaries. Michael kept teaching, but started carrying a weariness in his eyes. Rumors said federal agents were closing in on both empires. Rumors in Chicago were often premonitions. One evening, Marco wheeled into Lena's room holding a newspaper. The headline screamed, "Shadow syndicates signed cultural truce." "They're turning peace into a press release," Marco said. "Maybe if enough cameras flash, people will forget the graves." Lena looked at the photo, their father shaking hands with Don Moretti. Behind them, Ethan's smile was a knife. Some smiles are just rehearsals for revenge. That night at the Caprice Hotel banquet celebrating the so-called truce, Lena stood beside her father on stage. The hall glittered with gold and tension. Federal officials applauded, reporters jotted cliches about reconciliation. Across the room, Ethan raised his glass to her again, that same deliberate taunt. She turned her eyes towards Michael, who had been invited as part of a university outreach program. Their gazes met only for a second, but it was enough to remind her that honesty still existed somewhere in the room. Speeches ended. Music began. People danced like peace had weight. Lena slipped to the terrace for air. The rain had stopped. The city lights shimmered on wet pavement. She sat on a bench, breathing air that didn't smell like gun oil or fear. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number.
Against reason, she answered. "Miss Romano," a man's voice said. "Don Moretti sends his regards. He appreciates your courage at the dinner. Tell him I appreciate distance." A pause. "He also hopes his son's behavior will not cloud future peace." She almost laughed. "Your Don's son doesn't have behavior, he has instincts." The voice lowered. "Instincts are hard to cure, but they can be contained. For now, stay inside your borders." The line went dead. She sat staring at the waves until the cold forced her back to the car. Inside the glove compartment, she saw the small silver key Michael had given her, safety in metal form. She closed her fingers around it. Safety was still just a theory. The next few weeks crawled by. The Don hosted closed-door meetings with lawyers and intermediaries. Michael kept teaching, but started carrying a weariness in his eyes. Rumors said federal agents were closing in on both empires. Rumors, in Chicago, were often premonitions. One evening, Marco wheeled into Lena's room holding a newspaper. The headline screamed, "Shadow syndicates sign cultural truce." "They're turning peace into a press release," he said. "Maybe if enough cameras flash, people will forget the graves." Lena looked at the photo, their father shaking hands with Don Moretti. Behind them, Ethan's smile was a knife. Some smiles are just rehearsals for revenge. That night, at the Caprice Hotel banquet, celebrating the so-called truce, Lena stood beside her father on stage. The hall glittered with gold and tension. Federal officials applauded, reporters jotted cliches about reconciliation. Across the room, Ethan raised his glass to her again, that same deliberate taunt. She turned her eyes toward Michael, who had been invited as part of a university outreach program. Their gazes met only for a second, but it was enough to remind her that honesty still existed somewhere in the room. Speeches ended. Music began. People danced like peace had weight. Lena slipped to the terrace for air. The rain had stopped. The city lights shimmered on wet pavement. She felt someone approach before she heard him. "You shouldn't wander off," Ethan said. She didn't turn. "You shouldn't breathe my air." He chuckled. "You think this truce means I lost? I only changed tactics." "Go back inside, Ethan. Your father's peace doesn't include stalking." He stepped closer. "One day you'll realize you and I had the same breed. Caged royalty." She finally faced him. "The difference is, I'm learning how to break the cage." For a heartbeat, they stared at each other, predator and prey, though neither certain who was which. Then Michael's voice came from the doorway. "The Don's looking for you, Miss Romano." Ethan stepped back, mask sliding over his face. "Another time," he said, and disappeared into the crowd. Every predator retreats only to study how the prey runs. Back inside, Don Romano thanked guests, shook hands, smiled for cameras. To the world he looked victorious. To Lena he looked like a man buying time. When the hall emptied, he told her quietly, "The people believe in our peace now. That's the most dangerous illusion of all." She drove home alone. At the first intersection, a motorcycle screeched past, throwing a folded envelope onto her windshield before vanishing. Inside was a single photograph, Michael Hart leaving the university, circled in red ink. Beneath it the words, "Protect him if you can." Her throat dried. The war hadn't ended. It had merely changed its target. Peace doesn't end with gunfire. It ends when the innocent start to matter. She arrived at the mansion, ran to Marco's room, showed him the photo. He read it, jaw tightening. "They're warning you. Or daring you. Same thing," he said. "Either way, it means they're watching him now." Lena felt the chill settle into her bones. "I won't let him bleed for our name." Marco looked at her sadly. "Then you're already part of the family business." The next morning she drove to the university before sunrise. Michael was in his office, lights low, grading papers. He looked up surprised. "Lena, what's wrong?" She handed him the photo. His expression darkened, but his voice stayed calm. "Who sent this?" "Someone who wants me to choose between fear and stupidity." "Choose neither. Choose survival." She leaned against the desk, exhausted. "You don't understand. People who threaten in my world always follow through." "I understand more than you think." He opened a drawer, took out a small revolver, placed it on the desk. "This was my father's. He was a cop. He died trying to clean streets men like yours own." She stared at the gun, then at him. "And yet you help me?" "Because maybe helping you is how I forgive him for failing." Guilt is just love that lost its direction. Outside, sirens wailed somewhere near the river. The city was stirring again. Lena left his office with a warning lodged behind her ribs. One day soon, someone would force her to choose between Michael's safety and her family's survival. That night, a storm tore across Chicago. Lightning split the sky over the Romano estate as Don Romano gathered his captains. "No more accidents. If they come for us again, we answer loud." He looked at Lena. "Stay inside until this settles." But Lena knew storms never settled. They only found new ground. She stood at her window watching the rain wash blood from old bricks, thinking of Michael's quiet strength, Ethan's dangerous stare, her father's weary pride. All three men orbiting her fate like moons around a dying planet. When the lightning finally faded, she whispered to the darkness, "Let them come. I'm done hiding." In another part of the city, Ethan raised his glass to the same storm. "Soon," he murmured, "she'll know what belonging means." And across the river, Michael Hart stared out his window, unaware that two empires had just decided his value. In a city built on loyalty and lies, every heart owed someone a debt. Hers was about to come due. Rain had stopped, but the city still gleamed like a wound that refused to close. A week had passed since the photograph on Lena's windshield, yet the threat clung to her skin. Don Romano strengthened security, guards shadowed her lectures, her drives, even her coffee runs. Peace looked the same, but it now tasted of paranoia. Across the river, Ethan Moretti watched her world through binoculars from a penthouse balcony. Chicago lay beneath him, restless and electric, every light a possible witness. He took another drag of his cigarette, exhaled, and smiled. She thinks she's free, No one ever leaves a story halfway through. Some men love women, others love the idea of owning what the world says they can't have. Ethan's father believed in patience, diplomacy, legacy. Ethan believed in impact. He'd been raised on blood and inheritance, never no for an answer, never denied what he desired. Lena had slapped that belief out of him once. The echo of that moment had followed him into every sleepless night since. Meanwhile, Lena forced normalcy back into her schedule. She attended lectures, tutored undergraduates, smiled at Michael when he passed her in the hall. But under every polite word lay a tremor of vigilance. Michael sensed it. He'd been walking her to her car, a quiet ritual they both pretended was a coincidence. One evening, as dusk soaked the campus in violet, he said, "If you ever feel watched, you probably are. People underestimate instinct." She tried to smile. "You sound like my father." "I hope not," he said. "Your father's rules keep you in, mine are meant to get you out." She didn't answer because she already knew she could never fully leave either world. That weekend, a gallery downtown held a charity auction, a subtle competition ground for Chicago's elite. Don Romano sent Lena to represent the family's legitimate interests. Cameras flashed, art, wine, and alliances traded hands. When the lights dimmed for the main auction, a familiar chill slid down her spine. She turned and saw him, Ethan Moretti, leaning against the marble column like temptation carved in arrogance. He caught her gaze, raised a glass in mock salute. Security flanked her immediately, but she shook her head. Running would mean fear, and she refused to give him that satisfaction. Ethan approached slowly, each step deliberate. "You clean up well, Romano." She didn't blink. "You stalk poorly, Moretti." He laughed, low and unbothered. "Peace looks boring on you. You were made for chaos." "Maybe, but not yours." "Everything's mine eventually." Her guard moved closer, but Ethan lifted a hand. "Relax, I'm unarmed, tonight." He handed her a small envelope, then walked away before anyone could stop him. Inside, a photograph of Michael, again, this time in front of his apartment, date-stamped 2 nights prior. On the back, a single sentence, "Third time's the charm." When love becomes possession, even protection feels like a threat. Lena left the event immediately, fury and fear coiling together. By the time she reached the mansion, thunder rolled in from the lake. She burst into her father's office, throwing the photo on his desk. This is his 3rd warning. The Don scanned it, expression unreadable. "And what do you want me to do? Declare war again?" "I want him stopped." "He's already been warned." "Then warn him louder." Marco entered, weary. "Sister, yelling won't change men who think violence is language." She faced him. "Then maybe it's time they learn a new one." The Don slammed his fist. "Enough. You'll stay inside until I decide otherwise." She stepped closer. "You protect your name, I protect the people you forget exist. That's the difference between us." For a moment, silence drowned the thunder. Then he whispered, "You sound like my mother when she stopped believing in this family. Don't make me bury another voice like hers." Lena left before tears could betray her resolve. Sometimes rebellion is just love refusing to repeat history. That night, guards doubled outside her door. She waited till 2 a.m., slipped past them using the servant corridor, and drove into the rain. Michael's building stood dark except for one window, the soft yellow glow of his study. She buzzed once. When he opened the door, sleep still in his eyes, he saw the fear behind her composure. What happened? He's back. Ethan's name didn't need speaking. She told him about the gallery, the note, the photograph. Michael listened quietly, then poured her tea. "Do you want me to go to the police?" "They'll find nothing. He owns half of them." "Then what do you want me to do?" "Stay alive," she whispered.
He stepped closer, unsure but brave. "Lena, I can't keep standing on the sidelines of your war." She looked up. "Then stand beside me. Just don't get shot." He almost smiled. "I'll do my best." Days blurred into tension. Don Romano's men tracked whispers of Ethan's whereabouts, but found only decoys. The city buzzed with rumors of an unseen predator, one who didn't want money or territory, just a name. Then came attempt number 1. A Monday morning, overcast. Lena's car left the estate at dawn for the university. Halfway through the bridge, a truck blocked the road. 3 masked men emerged, weapons low. The driver braked hard. Before panic could bloom, 2 black sedans appeared from nowhere, ramming the truck aside. Romano guards swarmed, bullets bit the air. In the chaos, Lena was dragged from the car by Michael, who had followed her convoy in secret. They hid behind a pillar until sirens echoed. When it was over, 3 attackers lay bleeding, one barely alive. His last words before collapsing, "He said you'd come back to him willingly." The line between protection and pursuit was now written in blood. Back at the mansion, the Don roared. He declared his answer. Marco shook his head. No, this was just his greeting. Lena looked at Michael. "You followed me." He nodded. "I knew the bridge was the only blind spot on your route." Her father's eyes narrowed. "You knew her schedule?" He said, "She told me, sir, indirectly." The Don's expression hardened. "Indirectly could get you killed, Professor." Michael didn't blink. "Then I'll die literate." A silence stretched. Then, unexpectedly, the Don laughed once, short, rough. "You've got iron in your spine, Hart. Maybe that's what she sees." 3 nights later, attempt number 2. It happened at a hospital gala where Lena was presenting a donation check. Security was tight, press everywhere. Midway through her speech, lights flickered, then went out. A blackout. Panic surged. In the dark, a hand grabbed her wrist, strong, deliberate. She twisted free, struck back, connected with a jaw. When the lights returned, chaos blurred every face. On the floor lay a man in a waiter's uniform, bleeding from a shattered nose. He wasn't Ethan, but he carried a Moretti insignia ring. The Don's men hustled her away. Police arrived to find no suspects. Later that night, Lena received a text from an unknown number. "Nice reflexes. 2 out of 3. He wasn't chasing her to win. He was chasing her to break her sense of safety. Michael urged her to leave Chicago for a while. "Disappear. Let him get bored." She shook her head. "Predators don't get bored. They evolve." "Then let me protect you differently," he said. "Let me teach you how to disappear without leaving." He taught her patterns. Never drive the same route twice. Change timing. Use crowds, cameras, light. The lessons turned into evenings of whispered planning, maps spread across his floor, tension humming under every shared breath. One night after hours of strategy, their eyes met across the desk. Words failed first. He reached, hesitated, then brushed her hand. The touch was fleeting, but enough to make the world tilt. Lena pulled back gently. "You'll regret this." "Already do," but didn't step away. Love is just the most sophisticated form of disobedience. Attempt number 3 came 2 weeks later. A charity marathon, daylight, crowds cheering along Michigan Avenue. Lena joined as a public gesture of normalcy. Michael stood near the finish line, clipboard in hand. Midway through the race, a van broke the barrier, speeding toward the runners. Screams erupted. The driver swerved, aiming straight for her. She froze only for an instant, until Michael tackled her aside. The van crashed into a hydrant, steam hissing. The driver crawled out, gasping. Before police reached him, he whispered to Michael. He said, "Third time makes her his." Lena's heart thundered. It was him again. Michael nodded. And this time, there were cameras. Indeed, news crews had caught fragments of the scene. By evening, headlines blared, "Mob Harris targeted during charity run." The Don exploded in fury, calling the Moretti's traitors. Within hours, both patriarchs met under Old Man Russo's supervision. Tension crackled like static. Don Moretti brought his
son to the meeting, face bruised from his father's own hand. Ethan knelt, eyes burning. "I only wanted her safe," he said. Lena stood behind her father, trembling but silent. Don Romano's voice was ice. "You call this safety?" Moretti snarled. "He shamed us all. Do what you must." Then he turned and walked away, leaving his son kneeling on marble. Romano approached, gaze hard. "Stand, boy." Ethan obeyed. The Don slapped him across the face, once, sharp enough to echo. "Touch her again, and you'll vanish like smoke." Ethan didn't flinch. "Then I'll become fire." The Don's guards dragged him out. Some warnings only teach a monster patience. Lena returned home shaken. The city celebrated another fragile truce, but she felt no relief. Michael visited that night, bringing takeout and silence. They ate on her balcony, rain starting again. "You saved me 3 times," she said. "You don't even belong in this war." He looked at her gently. "Maybe I do now." "Why?" "Because somewhere between the first and the third, I stopped seeing you as collateral." The words hung between them, heavier than thunder. She didn't answer, just leaned her head against the glass, letting the sound of rain fill the space his confession had emptied. Courage is easy in gunfire, it's confession that costs. Ethan disappeared from sight. Weeks passed without incident. Don Romano relaxed security, hopeful. But Lena couldn't shake the sense of eyes in the dark. She dreamed of red ink circling her name. Sometimes she woke certain she heard footsteps outside her window. Michael noticed the change. "You're waiting for something," he said. "Yes," she replied, "for quiet to turn back into noise." One evening she found a box on her doorstep, no label. Inside lay a single object, a cracked silver locket she'd lost years ago during the First Family War. Inside, her childhood photo. Beneath it, a note. "Did you miss me?" Her scream brought guards running. They swept the grounds, nothing. The cameras had glitched exactly 5 minutes before the delivery. Even absence can stalk you if it knows where you dream. She took the locket to Michael. He examined it, thoughtful. "He's not done. This is ritual now. He wants me afraid." "Then don't be. Be angry." "I already am," she said. "I just haven't decided where to aim it." He smiled sadly. "That's what separates you from him. You still believe in aim." That night, Don Romano called her to the study. Russo insists on another public dinner, to show unity. She frowned. Unity built on bruises? Image keeps bullets off the streets. "And puts them in living rooms," she muttered, but he didn't hear. The dinner was scheduled for Friday. Invitation sent. The world would see the Romanos and Morettis bind together once more. Peace in suits and sequins. Ethan Moretti, however, was already planning his encore. The restaurant chosen for the reconciliation dinners sat on the riverfront, a glass palace reflecting the city's glitter and sins alike. Inside, tables gleamed beneath chandeliers that pretended the night outside didn't exist. Don Romano arrived first with Lena and Marco. Don Moretti entered later with his advisors and no son. Cameras waited by the doors, hungry for a photo of peace. When the meal began, wine flowed, but conversation didn't. The two Dons spoke in polished phrases that meant nothing, and every toast carried the taste of distrust. Lena felt the tremor of eyes somewhere unseen, like a hunter already sighting the next bullet. Halfway through the evening, a waiter placed a folded napkin beside her plate. She opened it and froze. Step outside, alone, or the professor dies. Her heart dropped into silence. She rose carefully, murmured something about air, and slipped through the terrace doors into the night. Some choices aren't between right and wrong. They're between who dies first. Outside, rain glittered against the river's black surface. A shadow stepped from behind a pillar. Ethan. His hair was damp, his suit immaculate, his eyes bright with the fever of obsession. "I told them I'd changed," he said softly. "I lied." "Where's Michael?" she demanded. He nodded toward the opposite bank, across the bridge in a car. "One call and it sinks." "You're insane." "No, I'm consistent.
I said third time's the charm. Lena took a step forward, anger steadying her. If you wanted me, you should have asked for forgiveness, not permission. He smiled. Forgiveness is for equals. I don't see one here. Before she could speak, doors burst open behind her. Don Romano's guards surged onto the terrace, guns raised. Ethan backed away, already laughing. Don't worry, princess. He's safe, for now. But love's a ledger, and I'm still collecting. Then he vanished into the rain. The guards hustled her inside, chaos following. Reporters caught only flashes, Don Romano furious, Moretti shouting that his son had escaped house arrest. The truce shattered a second time, this one loud enough to echo through every news station by morning. Peace didn't die quietly, it screamed her name on the front page. Michael was found alive, tied but unharmed, in his car by the bridge. When she saw him, relief and rage collided. You should have stayed away from me. He smiled faintly. That was never going to happen. I mean it, Michael. This isn't courage anymore. It's suicide. Then I'll die honest. She turned away before he could see the tears. Don Romano entered, face carved in stone. He's crossing every line. I'm done warning him. Marco nodded. So am I. The family prepared for retaliation, but old man Russo intervened, demanding restraint. You start another war, the government will finish both your houses. Find another way. For once, Lena agreed with the old man. Let me talk to him, she said. Her father stared. You want to meet the animal that tried to kill you? I want to end the hunt. Michael protested, but she held his gaze. You once said we choose which debts to pay. This one's mine. The meeting took place in an abandoned church on the edge of the city, where even echoes sounded afraid. Ethan waited near the altar, coat draped over a pew, gun visible but idle. You came alone, he said. I brought the ghost of your brother. Maybe that's enough company. His jaw tightened. You think his death was my fault? I know it was. Then why are you here? Because ending you in blood won't stop the cycle. I'm here to remind you what losing everything feels like. He laughed bitterly. You think you can hurt me more than I already am? Yes, she whispered. By living. He aimed the gun, hesitated. The church bells groaned as wind rattled the doors. For one heartbeat, he looked almost human again. Then footsteps echoed behind Lena. Michael's followed by Russo's men. Ethan's eyes widened. You tricked me. No, she said. You tricked yourself. Before the standoff could ignite, Russo stepped forward, voice carrying authority older than both families. Enough. You will not make a martyr of madness. Ethan lowered the weapon slowly, fury trembling in his hands. Russo's guards closed in. Even monsters hesitate when someone finally calls their name without fear. Ethan was taken away under guard, this time into his own father's custody. Don Moretti promised confinement, repentance, therapy, the usual lies families tell themselves before tragedy finishes the job. For a few days, Chicago breathed again. Lena returned to teaching, Michael resumed his lectures. They met in cafes instead of safe houses, learning how to smile without flinching. Hope was fragile, but it existed. One evening, she visited Marco's room. He was reading the day's paper. They've moved him to a clinic outside the city. Maybe this time he'll stay locked. Maybe, she answered, not believing it. Later that night, her phone buzzed, a video message from an unknown number. She pressed play. The image was shaky, dimly lit. Ethan, restrained to a hospital bed, smiling into the camera. His voice rasped. They think they can cure obsession. They can't. See you soon, Lena. The screen went black. She dropped the phone, pulse hammering. Within 48 hours, the clinic burned. Officials called it an electrical accident. Both families knew better. Ethan had escaped again, and Chicago's skyline felt smaller for it. Don Romano prepared for war. Michael, watching from the edge of this madness, made a decision. He visited Lena's father privately. If you go to war, she'll be caught in it again, he said. The Don poured whiskey, studied the amber swirl. She's been caught since birth. Then let me get her out. And where will you take her, Professor? Morality doesn't buy passports. Then I'll counterfeit one, Michael replied quietly. The Don looked at him a long time. You love her? Yes. Then love her enough to survive her world. That night, Lena found a note on her desk in Michael's handwriting. If I can't protect you inside the storm, I'll learn to fight it. She folded it carefully, knowing the storm was already here. Ethan's final move came fast. During a cultural festival downtown, amid fireworks and music, a sniper's shot cracked the sky. Panic scattered the crowd. The bullet missed her by inches, shattering a column instead. In the chaos, police found a single casing with the Moretti crest engraved. The next morning, Don Moretti arrived at the Romano estate uninvited. His face looked 20 years older. I have no son, he said simply, and laid Ethan's personal revolver on the Don's desk. Find him before I do. When fathers disown monsters, the city becomes their orphanage. Lena stood by the window, watching rain carve streaks across the glass. Michael joined her. It's over, he said softly. No, she whispered.
This is the silence before the sirens. Outside, thunder rolled again, the kind that feels like footsteps drawing closer. Somewhere in that endless maze of streets, Ethan Moretti was free, burning with love twisted into vengeance. And as the lightning flashed over Chicago, Lena understood what the next chapter would demand, not just endurance, but retaliation. A teacher had found courage in love, a gangster had found madness in it, and the city was about to decide which burned brighter. But some fires don't fade when the night ends. They wait, patient, hungry, until love dares to breathe again. Chicago isn't finished with them yet, and neither is Ethan Moretti. This was only the beginning, and when the storm returns, every secret will demand its price. To be continued. Blood for Blood. Like and subscribe. Press bell icon for notification on new upload.